"Don't fret. Your entire life is in front of you," a frequently uttered saying to adolescents. This was precisely what Anna Kriegel, a 14-year-old student residing in Ireland, repeatedly heard. And nobody could have foreseen the terrifying incidents that unfolded on a regular day in May 2018. Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel resided in Ireland. By 2006, they had celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary. This couple was deeply connected, sharing a dream of welcoming a child into their lives. Aware of the extensive and time-consuming nature of the adoption procedure and the stringent requirements for prospective parents, they remained hopeful. The Kriegels inhabited a spacious residence in the serene, verdant suburb of Leixlip, situated in County Kildare's northeast. Paris, France, was Patrick's birthplace. He was involved in educating students in commercial and business-related French at the Dublin Institute of Technology. Geraldine held a senior management position in the legal department of a government-operated public transportation entity. Both partners enjoyed successful careers, had the financial stability, and harbored a profound desire to nurture a child, eagerly anticipating the arrival of their firstborn. Their patient wait was rewarded with the exhilarating news of a 2-year-old girl from Russia, ready for adoption. Anastasia Kriegel, born on February 18, 2004, in Novokuznetsk, was placed in an orphanage shortly after birth due to her biological mother's inability to provide proper care. Spending her early years mostly in solitude as caregivers, focused on more demanding children. This led to initial deficits in social and emotional development. The Kriegels were overjoyed at the prospect of meeting their daughter. It was an instant bond. August 10, 2006, marked their adoption's formalization, a day celebrated as a significant family milestone. They chose to retain her original name, affectionately nicknaming her Anna. The arrival of Anna's laughter in their house marked the most joyful day for Geraldine and Patrick. Eager to connect her with her roots, they presented her with a traditional Russian matryoshka doll, containing an image of young Anastasia inside. As she matured, Anna established and kept up connections with her younger siblings, including a newly added younger brother named Aaron. The tranquil existence of the couple evolved into an exhilarating journey. Anna became her father's darling and her mother's cherished princess. The parents dedicated themselves to providing their offspring with the finest experiences, sharing numerous activities like ice skating, skiing, playful times, and planning family excursions. Every summer, the Kriegel clan vacationed in Annecy, France, Patrick's native land, where they owned a residence, and Anna forged numerous friendships. This yearly holiday was eagerly anticipated by Anna, who cherished her father's birthplace and took pride in learning French. However, Anna's life was not without its challenges. She had difficulties mastering English, which her mother assisted her with, striving to ensure her daughter could communicate smoothly with her peers. Additionally, Anna faced issues with forming attachments and expressing emotions. Her time in the orphanage, characterized by a lack of affection and prolonged periods in her crib, left her unaccustomed to physical touch. Nonetheless, Geraldine and Patrick bridged this emotional void, offering unwavering support and love. Their nurturing environment, enriched with educational activities, healthy eating, and physical exercise, laid a robust foundation for Anna's future. Physical health concerns also emerged for the Kriegel's daughter. During a standard health checkup, a doctor detected a tumor in Anna's right ear. Surgery to remove it, lasting 5.5 hours, resulted in her near-total hearing loss in the affected ear and partial vision loss in the corresponding eye. Despite these setbacks, Anna grew into a lively and spirited youngster. Her hearing and vision impairments significantly hindered her academic progress, particularly in memorizing terms, leading to poor school performance through primary education. She engaged in specialist consultations until the 8th grade to keep pace with her peers. Middle school presented further challenges due to her sensitive disposition and distinctive personality traits. Being loud, at times disagreeable, and overly enthusiastic, traits more common in younger children yet pronounced in Anna due to her maturity. To support Anna in navigating these difficulties, Geraldine and Patrick encouraged her participation in swimming and later dance, where she found joy and even performed at local events with a group. Despite her apprehensions about middle school, where the quest for acceptance among peers was daunting, Anna yearned to make new friends, confronting the harsh reality of teenage cruelty towards those perceived as different. Classmates somehow found out that the girl was adopted, and they started to tease her, calling Geraldine and Patrick fake parents. Unable to make friends at school, Anna felt rejected and began to spend even more time on the internet. She had profiles on several social networks and her own YouTube channel. On one hand, being online opened up a whole new world, but on the other, there were people hiding behind fake accounts whose goal was to ruin others' lives because they were nothing themselves. Anna, like many teenagers, was very impressionable and took all the negative comments to heart. This further destroyed her self-esteem and led to her wanting even less to stay in this world. The fact was that the girl grew much faster than most of her peers and noticeably stood out from the crowd. By the age of 13, her height was almost 5 feet 9.69 inches, which was not surprising since Anna was a native Siberian. But in Ireland, this only gave a reason for insults. From the outside, she looked quite mature, and there were many comments of an intimate nature about her on the internet. But the girl was only 13 years old. She was naive, and this only brought her another disappointment in life. Anna told her mother what was happening. Geraldine, far from virtual life, tried to protect her daughter from the negativity and sought help from the school principal. She expressed concern that her daughter was being bullied, but how could an educator influence anonymous online users? And this only worsened Anna's situation because rumors spread that her parents were worried about her. Soon, classmates found all her profiles on social networks, which led to even more negativity. One day, the girl was walking home alone, enjoying long walks in her favorite blue headphones, when unexpectedly 4 young men blocked her way. They mocked her, making unambiguous hints, and one even pinched her ass. Anna looked like an adult woman, but inside she was still an innocent child. She was scared, ran home in tears, and told her mother everything. Geraldine and Patrick took the incident seriously and filed a complaint against the young men. The parents told officers about the person who inappropriately touched Anna, but he was just given a warning. No charges were filed. The mother and father decided to drive their daughter to school and escort her to classes every day. However, this was not normal for a teenager and only led to a new wave of ridicule against her. It got to the point where Anna drew a bruise under her eye and came to school in such a state. It was a cry for attention. The girl depicted how she felt inside, bruised, broken, and hurt, and she wanted to show this to others. She created several fake accounts and started leaving offensive comments under her own photos and posts on social networks. Perhaps in this way, Anna wanted to get closer to her peers, to do the same as they did, laugh at herself. Every alteration profoundly affected Geraldine. Witnessing her gentle daughter in such distress was painful. The root causes were manifold, as Anna turned to physical methods to escape her emotional turmoil, inflicting damage on herself. The parents sounded the alarm, apprehensive their child might take more drastic actions. They sought help from an organization that specialized in guiding teenagers through evolving and challenging scenarios. But there, Anna's issues were considered too severe, beyond their scope, leading her to a charitable group dedicated to aiding individuals at risk of self-injury. The girl participated in these meetings weekly, yet still departed school solitary, eyes cast downward, headphones in, while her peers exited in lively, chattering groups. This reality weighed heavily on Geraldine. She deeply empathized with her daughter. Concealing her tears of desperation, her sole wish was for her daughter's happiness. At last, personal therapy started to show promise, with the girl forming a few intimate friendships, enjoying sleepovers, strolls, movie nights, and confiding in them about boys. Anna's initial year of middle school was nearing its conclusion. On the sunny afternoon of Sunday, May 13, 2018, Geraldine intended to assist her daughter with test preparations. They typically reviewed together, particularly on weekends, and despite her demanding job, Geraldine always managed to allocate time for Anna's academic needs. However, they opted for relaxation, turning on the TV, preparing popcorn, and cuddling on the sofa for a movie, later enjoying a family event. Anna's cherished cousins were all present. Geraldine ordered pizza for the group, the children engaged in games, while the adults savored wine and appetizers, creating a joyful atmosphere. Yet, unbeknownst to Anna's relatives, this evening would mark the last of such gatherings. On the morning of May 14th, 2018, the day started off as it typically did. Geraldine caught a train heading to Dublin, and Anna set off for her school day. Later in the afternoon, she was scheduled to see a psychologist, and Patrick, now enjoying his retirement, took advantage of a leisurely morning to sleep in. Once her classes were concluded by 4 p.m., Anna attempted to contact her mother, who was unable to respond due to being engaged in an important business meeting. Geraldine responded via text, promising to return the call at her earliest convenience. Meanwhile, Patrick was enjoying the sunshine in the garden when he heard the doorbell. Greeting him at the door was a young man, around the same age as Anna. The sight was unexpected. The girl seemed taken aback by the visitor. Although they knew each other, Patrick had never witnessed them spending time together before. Anna's excitement was evident. She whispered briefly to the visitor, snatched up her beloved black hooded sweatshirt, and informed her dad she'd be back shortly. Before rushing off, Patrick reminded her of her study obligations, which she dismissed, caught up in the moment. He watched them head toward the much-frequented St. Catherine's Park, marking the last moment he saw his daughter. Patrick was initially unworried, considering the park's close proximity, just a 20-minute stroll away, and its popularity among kids Anna's age. The park, covering an area of 80 hectares, boasts woodlands, picturesque fields, spots for picnicking, and play areas. It's a common site for dog walkers, sports enthusiasts, and hosts various events, remaining open to visitors until 6 p.m. as indicated at its entrance. By 5:10 p.m., Geraldine was leaving for home and tried calling Anna, receiving no response. Assuming she would be back soon, she refrained from calling again. Yet, upon her return, Anna was nowhere to be found. Patrick relayed to his wife that Anna had gone to the park with a young man, an odd occurrence given Anna's struggles to connect with peers, and now a boy had approached her for a walk. The mother immediately texted her daughter, urging her return. Given Anna's constant attachment to her phone, her silence was alarming. Mrs. Kriegel, always overly cautious due to Anna's past experiences with bullying and her medical conditions, and recent troubles with young men, sent a stern warning in her next message, threatening to involve the police if she didn't hear back. The message aimed to express her deep concern, yet Anna remained silent. Overwhelmed with concern, Geraldine ventured into the park, noticing families and dog walkers but no trace of Anna. The parents, driven by anxiety over their daughter's unusual silence, scoured various streets by car, desperate for any sign of her. Their worry deepened given the constant communication they typically maintained with Anna. Adding to their distress was their lack of knowledge about the young man Anna had last been seen with. Upon returning home without any leads, they delved into online searches for any connections to Anna's school peers or friends that might resemble the boy, but to no avail. As the night wore on, reaching 9 p.m., 4 hours after Anna's departure, the Kriegels, acknowledging their daughter's minor status, reported her as missing to the police, emphasizing her unusual lack of communication and the mysterious young man's invitation. The police swiftly identified and located the boy, referred to here as Bray for privacy. Bray and his family were taken aback by the police's late visit, during which they inquired about the specifics of his and Anna's separation that day. Bray recounted their walk in the park, noting that they had parted ways around 5:40 p.m. Following Bray's account, the police initiated an official search for Anastasia Kriegel, canvassing the area and reviewing surveillance footage for clues. Geraldine and Patrick distributed photos of Anna, particularly one featuring the black hoodie she wore when last seen. The community rallied around the distraught parents, aiding in a thorough search effort. Meanwhile, the police scrutinized video evidence showing Anna and Bray together in St. Catherine's Park around 5 p.m. and exiting near another park entrance at 5:14 p.m. However, mere minutes after their departure from the park and following an unanswered message from her mother, Anna vanished without a trace. The mystery deepened with Bray's return home absent Anna, prompting questions about the events that transpired after their last sighting together. The investigation took a critical turn with the discovery of a witness who had observed the teenagers walking towards Blake Avenue, appearing jovial. Surveillance footage later showed Bray traversing the park alone at 5:49 p.m. Under scrutiny, Bray revealed the involvement of another friend, Arun, in their plans. Arun and Bray had a connection to Anna, with one being the object of her affection and the other playing the role of a facilitator for their outside-the-park rendezvous. Armed with this new information, the police escalated their efforts, broadcasting the search for Anna extensively across community networks, digital platforms, and local media by the evening of May 15th, while also making a concerted push to identify Arun. Arun, identifiable by his backpack, was captured entering and later exiting the park's vicinity, marking his absence for a significant period. With two teenage witnesses now part of the narrative, the police were keen on corroborating their accounts to piece together the events of that day. As the community's concern grew, the police were inundated with sightings of Anna from various locations, adding layers of complexity to the search. Amidst these reports, a tip suggesting Anna might have eloped was briefly considered, but ultimately deemed implausible. In an attempt to unravel the mystery, detectives organized a park walkthrough with Bray and Arun under the watchful eyes of their parents. Their interaction during this exercise raised suspicions, prompting the police to separate them for detailed questioning at the station. Bray's account was consistent with his earlier statement. However, Arun's story differed. He was surprised when his friend brought Anna along, knowing she had a crush on him, but he had no feelings for her. When Kriegel invited him on a date, he expressed his disinterest, and eventually she left looking sad and annoyed, and his friend had also disappeared by then. On his way home, Arun was attacked by two strange men, leading to a fight during which he managed to hit one on the head, and both men ran off. He even showed the sergeant injuries he had sustained, including marks on his arm and leg and a cut on his face. These men could be responsible for Anna's abduction, so the detectives needed their full description. They also took the boys' belongings for forensic analysis, hoping to find DNA of the assailants. As the probe advanced at an accelerated pace, law enforcement called in specialized search units, including divers to scrutinize adjacent aquatic areas and a team of rescuers. With a total of 60 individuals involved, alongside volunteers and all relatives of the Kriegel family, the vanishing of Anna turned into the leading news event throughout Ireland. Her image wearing a hoodie became emblematic of her case. Adjacent to St. Catherine's Park lay Glenwood, a forsaken farmhouse. Following a report from an onlooker about spotting a youth heading that way, the authorities opted to inspect the premises. In 2018, Glenwood was a rundown rural mansion, originally a double-story dwelling located on a 42-hectare farmstead constructed in the 19th century. Previously regarded as a magnificent property, it had turned into a frequented gathering place for youths. The mansion was in decay, with a section of its roof caved in and overrun with rubble. The reason for law enforcement's delayed focus on this site remained uncertain. On Thursday, May 17th, detectives undertook an extensive search of the property, initiating from the farmhouse and progressively covering the fields. Search squads began at St. Catherine's Park, meticulously inspecting each trench on their way to the abandoned edifice. A number of experts searched the ancillary structures at Glenwood, while others proceeded to the main dwelling. Inside was profoundly dark. Scarcely any light made it through the boarded-up apertures. In the initial chamber, cluttered with debris and waste, a figure on the ground was initially mistaken for a dummy by a policeman, who was then struck by a pungent odor filling the space. As his vision adapted to the gloom, he realized it was the nude body of a woman. Littered around were fragments of apparel and a shattered cell phone. The area was splattered with blood, and close by was a brick and a hefty stick. Identified by the garments, it was Anastasia Kriegel. Her corpse exhibited numerous wounds, with a strip of insulating tape tightly wrapped around her neck. Underneath the tape, 3 of her fingers were positioned as though she had attempted to remove it herself. It was evident she had valiantly struggled for her life, now amidst refuse and shattered glass bottles, lifelessly bare except for black socks. Instantly, myriad inquiries emerged regarding how such a calamity could strike an innocent young girl, the identity of the perpetrator, why Anna was in that vicinity, and if the boys had witnessed her being assaulted. The most challenging aspect was to convey to the parents that they would never again experience their daughter's laughter or witness her smile, nor would they be fetching her from school anymore. No parent was ever ready for such devastating news. This irrevocably altered the existence of Geraldine and Patrick. The loss of their much-awaited, deeply cherished Anna represented an indescribable tragedy. The details of the tragedy quickly became known to the entire small community, shocking most people. Glenwood House, located near St. Catherine's Park, a place where children peacefully played and where nothing like this had ever happened before, was now the scene of a grim discovery. Overwhelmed by grief, Geraldine and Patrick asked for one thing: privacy. They wanted to do everything possible to shield their younger son, Aaron, from the news. On May 18, 2018, Anastasia Kriegel was buried. Hundreds of people attended her funeral, wearing red and white armbands in honor of the girl. A whole new world from Disney played in the background because Anna loved Disney. A miniature Eiffel Tower was placed in her coffin to honor her love for her father's homeland, France, and atop it, a Russian flag was placed. The last item Geraldine and Patrick placed with Anna was a Russian matryoshka doll, a nod to the country where she was born. The autopsy revealed the girl had suffered over 50 injuries, with bruises and cuts all over her body, particularly on her face, head, and neck. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and strangulation. Forensic evidence showed that Anna had been assaulted, indicated by traces of semen found on her body. It was unclear whether she was alive or conscious during the assault. Kriegel's death occurred between 5:25 p.m. and 5:40 p.m., just minutes after she parted ways with the boys. Upon entering the room, she was struck with a heavy stick with nails protruding from both ends, followed by several blows from a broken brick. Blood spatter on the walls of the room, and evidence suggested her attacker dragged Anna towards the window, likely to get more light. After examining all evidence, the police made 2 arrests on May 24th. The community was shaken by the shockwave. 2 teenagers, Bray and Aaron, last seen with Anna, were suspects in the young girl's death. Found in Aaron's backpack were a homemade zombie mask with Anna's blood, black gloves, shin guards, and knee pads. His DNA in the form of semen matched, and her blood was also found on his shoes and clothing. However, his mother, believing the story of an attack by 2 men, washed all his clothes. Arun's phone revealed a disturbing search history that included questions about torturing and humiliating women, along with a gallery of indecent images. The Children Act in Ireland provides several forms of safeguarding for young offenders, including ensuring their anonymity by transporting them to court appearances in vehicles without identification. Officials are convinced that keeping the identities of juvenile offenders confidential is essential for their future prospects, no matter the severity of the offense. Interrogations took place with the boys' parents present. Arun firmly rejected any participation in Anna's demise, in spite of clear evidence. The DNA from the other boy was not found at the scene of the crime, and his possessions were free of any blood. During interrogation, he confessed to witnessing Anna going into the Glenwood residence with Arun, but claimed ignorance of his friend's motives. Bray became curious about the dilapidated house until he was alarmed by screams. Upon entering, he saw Arun ripping apart Anna's clothing and attacking her, then turning to Bray with a look of void and menace, prompting Bray to simply walk away. Bray's remorse stemmed from his silence about the assault, as Anna's fate was essentially in his control. It later emerged that Arun had previously shared nefarious schemes with Bray, even naming the intended victim, hinting at their joint guilt. The release of both boys on bail pending their court date sparked public fury, not just for their opportunity to spend the summer with their kin, but also due to their shielded identities. Yet, the Irish legal system argued that in taking such measures, they were offering these youths a chance for redemption and rehabilitative prospects. Anyone trying to unveil their anonymity would be subject to legal action. Both boys came from respectable homes, were successful academically, and had no history of prior incidents or psychological problems, which profoundly astonished the community. The proceedings commenced on April 30th, 2019. During the entire duration of the trial, which was not open to the general public, the boys were permitted to have their parents by their side. Geraldine and Patrick Kriegel were present throughout the trial, enduring the recounting of the dreadful events. Despite the difficulty, they were determined to support Anna to the very end, bearing the agony of their daughter's ordeal alongside her. The narrative put forth by the prosecution suggested that Bray deceived Anna into leaving her home under the guise of meeting with Arun, whom she adored. The young man led her to Glenwood House, where the assault occurred. Remarkably, the accused were removed from the courtroom during the presentation of the post-mortem findings by the examiner to shield their young minds from further trauma. The length of the trial was extended for the comfort of the accused, while their legal representatives pointed to a dispute between Anna and Arun as a potential cause. Deliberations by the jury started on June 12, 2019, and 5 days later, they delivered their judgment. Arun was sentenced to life imprisonment, with the possibility of a review after 12 years due to his minor status at the time of the offense. Bray was found culpable for Anna Kriegel's death, despite the absence of direct physical proof of his involvement, and received a 15-year sentence, with a review set for 8 years hence. By law, their identities are to be kept confidential, with provisions for new identities upon their release. The tragic story of Anna Kriegel's life and harsh ending received worldwide attention. While efforts were made to protect the identities of the two youths, several instances of their identities being disclosed online occurred. This led to public outcry against the perceived protection of criminals by the system. Over 10 individuals faced consequences for sharing images or the actual names of the boys, in breach of Ireland's legislation protecting minors. Yet, the most profound sentence was endured by Anna's adoptive parents. As Geraldine expressed, life without Anna ceased to be life at all. Patrick Kriegel passed away on June 19, 2022, haunted by regret over his decision to let his daughter leave with an unfamiliar boy that day. Envision a scenario where, amidst the joys of youth and the crafting of future aspirations with your friends, an unseen observer lurks in the darkness. This is the individual who will, in a single night, snatch away all your dreams. Brooke Elizabeth entered the world on April 24, 1978, welcomed by Morris and Janet Baker. Shortly after, her younger sibling, Brown, arrived. Raised in a nurturing household, Brooke's zest for knowledge shone brightly, even though her parents hadn't pursued higher education. She harbored aspirations to venture beyond her hometown of Vincennes, Indiana, a historic settlement and the administrative heart of Knox County. This region was notable for establishing the first Christian congregations, reflecting its residents' devout beliefs, including the Baker family, who were faithful churchgoers. Despite its modest population of around 18,000, Vincennes was far from tranquil. A pervasive unease linked to unresolved crimes afflicted Knox County. This situation might have stemmed from various factors. Perhaps the local law enforcement lacked the necessary resources, or maybe there was a gap in detective training and procedural knowledge, or they were hindered by insufficient authority and funding. Amidst these circumstances, the Bakers made their home, managing on a modest income. Yet Brooke's ambitions soared high. She aimed for remarkable achievements, and her parents were unwavering in their encouragement. Her vivid imagination soon found an outlet in writing, transforming her ambitions into narratives. By the time she was in high school, she contributed to the school newspaper, sharing her insights and views. Journalism emerged as Brooke's calling, crystallizing her future ambitions. Even before graduating high school, she began exploring journalism programs at nearby colleges. Brooke envisioned a future for herself in New York, aiming for a career at Rolling Stone magazine. Her confidence in openly setting ambitious goals distinguished her from others. She was deeply convinced of her talent and unwavering in her pursuit of excellence. Her immediate objective was to earn a journalism degree from Vincennes State University, known for its long history. Journalism students at the university had the chance to contribute to its distinguished newspaper, The Trailblazer. Brooke seized this opportunity, securing her place in the journalism department. Her initial goal was to ascend to the position of editor for the university newspaper, a critical milestone she believed would pave the way to her broader aspirations. Morris and Janet, her parents, swelled with pride for their daughter, recognizing in Brooke a remarkable individual destined for groundbreaking achievements, unaware of the twists the future held. Baker stood out from her peers with her extraordinary resolve. At a gathering of journalism students where they shared their aspirations, most had 2 or 3 ambitions. Brooke listed 25. Her ambitions spanned from being elected as a senator or congresswoman to reporting on the most contentious issues. Her confidence was so palpable that her goals seemed undoubtedly achievable. From day one, she became a beacon of inspiration to many freshmen. In college, Brooke hit the ground running, always on the move, forging new friendships and building essential networks. Her family, particularly her brother Brown, who often visited and made friends on campus even before enrolling, was a pivotal source of support. However, Brooke wasn't the type to immerse herself solely in academics or spend her days confined to the library. She loved socializing and was notably attractive. Her charismatic aura, flowing blonde hair, gray-green eyes, and dimpled smile drawing attention from many. Brooke enjoyed her social life and dated a few classmates, but steered clear of serious relationships, prioritizing her career ambitions. She navigated friendships with males more smoothly than with females, and even shared an apartment with a male roommate named Jason during her first college year, until she could manage to live independently. Brooke devoted much of her energy to producing stories for the university newspaper, focusing on controversial subjects to establish her distinct voice. Brooke was adept at making friends, but also knew how to stir controversy, as some were wary of becoming subjects in the Trailblazer. Her aim evolved towards becoming an investigative journalist, intent on uncovering the truth and staying abreast of campus happenings and potential scandals. While some questioned her motives, suspecting her of mingling for stories, many believed Brooke was addressing injustices through her investigative work. Despite skepticism and accusations of sensationalism from detractors, possibly fueled by jealousy, Brooke's commitment to shedding light on hidden campus issues remained unwavering. As Baker embarked on her sophomore year, she committed to unveiling the reality that loomed over the campus, a truth she believed might carry legal implications once brought to light. This investigative journey began in the spring of 1997, as Brooke concluded her first year at college. Her circle included males affiliated with fraternities, known not only for their lavish parties but also for their significant influence on campus, a power, she observed, often misused to exploit the more vulnerable and defenseless. Baker was determined to champion the cause of those too frightened to voice their experiences. Fraternity initiation processes are notorious for their rigorous demands on aspirants, requiring them to undergo various tests to demonstrate their eligibility for membership. Among these tests, some challenges pushed the boundaries of decency, from daring tasks like impulsively kissing a stranger to more grievous allegations. Whispered accounts of coerced sexual encounters began to surface, painting a grim picture of young men seeking to assert their dominance over unsuspecting females as a rite of passage into these fraternal orders. Victims of such violations typically remained silent, fearing the stigma that could mar their reputations. Brooke aimed her investigative lens at one of the campus's most prominent fraternities, implicated in these egregious acts against women. Armed with information and a fierce resolve to uphold justice, Baker refused to remain silent in the face of what she perceived as a grave injustice. In the spring of 1997, Brooke initiated her investigation into the troubling incidents within campus fraternities, carrying her efforts into the fall of her sophomore year. Despite the inherent risks and cautionary advice from some faculty members, Brooke's determined nature only fueled her resolve to delve deeper. Intriguingly, her connection to the fraternity in question was closer than most. Her roommate Jason was not only a member, but also deeply integrated with those at the heart of the allegations, making him an invaluable informant. With Jason's assistance, Brooke planned to firsthand witness the fraternity's activities during their infamous Thirsty Thursday parties, known for their late-night revelries, accompanied by her friend Chynna, another editor of the college newspaper, and her supportive brother, now a fellow student. The group immersed themselves in the event's festivities. Brooke and Chynna engaged with various attendees, subtly gathering information. Their investigation bore fruit when they acquired contact details for a young woman who alleged she had been coerced into sexual acts by a fraternity member. Unbeknownst to Brooke, their investigative activities did not go unnoticed, attracting attention in the crowded, boisterous setting, including that of the fraternity brothers themselves. Following the party, Brooke faced ominous threats warning her to cease her inquiries, stirring concerns among her friends about potential repercussions, including the possibility of expulsion for conducting an unauthorized investigation. However, Brooke's circumstances had changed. She was now financially able to live independently from Jason, moving into a unique house strategically located across from the journalism laboratory and near most of her classes. Her neighbors, a couple of faculty members who served as her mentors, admired Brooke's drive. Additionally, the property belonged to a local police officer, providing an added sense of security. Brooke felt reassured, knowing support was close at hand should any problems arise. The motivation for relocating stemmed from the verbal threats and emails she encountered. On a bright summer day, while Brooke was visiting a friend's residence, a vehicle carrying several men arrived. They began shouting at her and menacingly warned that her life was at risk if she did not cease her actions. These individuals were part of a male fraternity. Regardless, with the commencement of the upcoming semester, Baker persisted in her investigation into the assaults on women by fraternity members. It was the final year of her program, after which she intended to move to somewhere within New York. She never anticipated that this term would mark not only her last at Vincennes University, but also the conclusion of her life. Baker's inquiry was approaching its conclusion, and she was thrilled as she was on the verge of revealing the truth regarding the incident involving the girl who alleged she was assaulted on the steps of a student residence. Brooke had already made a phone call and arranged an interview with this student, planned for mid-September. Baker was documenting this narrative to prevent other female students from enduring similar experiences, yet she was unaware that she would shortly become the target of a crime herself. On the evening of September 7, 1997, at 21:34, the Indiana State Police Department received an urgent call. The alarmed voice on the line belonged to Brown Baker, Brooke's younger brother, who reported a dreadful sight at his sister's residence. At just 18, the gruesome discovery he made that night was something he would likely never forget. Brown frequently visited Brooke at her home near the campus, as their parents were concerned about her living alone, and he sought to alleviate their worries. Earlier that day, he had checked in, but Brooke was not there. Returning in the evening, he knocked on the door again, but got no response. Sensing something amiss, he used his key to enter. Calling out for his sister without getting a reply, he proceeded further and noticed the sound of running water. Thinking Brooke might be in the shower, he knocked loudly but was met with silence. Cracking the bathroom door open, he found it empty except for wet towels in the bathtub. After turning off the water, Brown headed to the bedroom where he immediately spotted Brooke, naked and lifeless on the bed. In the dim light, it became clear she wasn't sleeping. His initial reaction was to cover her with a blanket, believing that no one should witness his sister in such a condition. Then he left the house and called 911. By 10 p.m., officers had arrived and promptly secured the area with yellow tape, blocking off the house and surrounding yard to ensure no further disturbances. However, word of the tragedy quickly spread beyond the police barriers, reaching the student community and almost instantaneously, Brooke's parents, signaling a horrific turn of events had taken place. Morris and Janet hurried to the residence of their cherished daughter, resolute in their commitment to unearth the identity of her assailant. Amidst Janet's distraught attempts to reach her daughter's body, detectives meticulously examined the crime scene. The presence of wet towels in the bathroom, alongside a nearby bottle of bleach, led investigators to deduce that the culprits had attempted to erase their traces. The discovery of 2 depleted bottles of dish soap in a kitchen sink brimming with water indicated a significant effort to cleanse the scene, with a concealed knife found beneath the pile of plates. Brooke's body bore several stab wounds, delivered with tremendous force by a sharp implement, and she had been sexually assaulted by her assailant, enabling forensic experts to collect DNA evidence from seminal fluid. Preliminary assessments indicated she had been deceased for no more than a day. In their quest for leads, detectives interrogated Brown to compile a list of potential suspects and individuals close to Brooke. They were unprepared for the extensive network of Brooke's social interactions, realizing the daunting number of interviews that lay ahead. The news of the demise of Brooke Baker, a driven journalism student who always pursued the most challenging stories, sent waves of disbelief through the faculty. The investigation took a significant turn as the police embarked on a detailed reconstruction of the events leading up to Brooke's untimely death, aiming to piece together the narrative of her final day. It was a quiet Saturday, the 6th of September, 1997, with no academic sessions in place, yet Brooke's schedule was packed. She traversed various locations both on and off the campus, engaging with numerous individuals. A campus security officer last spotted her around 1 a.m., making her way home accompanied by another student. 19 hours thereafter, Brown stumbled upon her remains. During this extensive time frame, Brooke endured a vicious assault. She suffered from numerous contusions and 13 puncture wounds inflicted by a steak knife discovered in the sink. Despite the assailant's efforts to cleanse the knife of all traces, a tiny fragment of tissue lingered. The DNA evidence retrieved from the semen was catalogued as number 137F. The next step was to identify its owner. Authorities vetted every male acquaintance of the victim, conducted interviews with roughly 1,000 students, and collected over 100 DNA samples, yet none correlated with specimen 137F suspects spanned across a fraternity that had issued threats to Brooke, her former boyfriends, and even her property manager. Still, none of these leads bore fruit. With over 400 interrogations conducted and a database encompassing 572 individuals linked to the case, no matches were found for 137F. As weeks rolled by, the Baker family sensed a standstill in the probe. Brooke's parents voiced to the press their need to persistently inquire about the investigation's status. Despairing of police efforts, they arranged community gatherings to discuss not just their daughter's tragic end, but also the myriad unresolved issues plaguing Knox County. Brooke's mother, Jeanette, lamented to journalists that her daughter was deprived of the ability to breathe, laugh, or speak, and her son was left to bear the burden of his witnessed horrors, while the perpetrator roamed free. Each passing day granted the murderer another day of liberty. The Baker family persisted in distributing flyers across the city, showcasing pictures of people who had perished in Knox County and whose mysteries were yet to be solved. They pondered whether Brooke's demise would end up being merely another number. The campus students no longer experienced a sense of security following the savage killing of a fellow student. A haunting hope lingered, filled with terrible connotations that the criminal might commit another act. Nonetheless, life in the city continued as Brooke Baker lay in eternal rest, until 2 years later, a new incident unfolded that appeared strikingly similar to the Vincennes law enforcement. On the morning of Monday, July 5, 1999, detectives entered a different apartment located merely 7 blocks from Brooke's grim discovery site. This residence was home to another student from Vincennes University, Erica Norman. Born to Dean and Elaine on November 13, 1977, Erica grew up with 3 siblings. Throughout her high school years, she excelled as a royal ambassador, engaged in softball, gymnastics, joined the drama club, and was an active participant in the Spanish Honor Society. By 1999, Erica had reached the age of 21 and was immersed in studying foreign languages while also taking broadcasting courses at the university. She held the position of vice president in the women's club Alpha Theta Chi and harbored aspirations of globe-trotting. However, Erica had mysteriously disappeared. The Vincennes police were alerted by a neighboring resident who noticed that the sound of flowing water had been emanating from Erica's apartment for an extended period. With no response to his knocks and the door strangely unlocked, the neighbor felt compelled to investigate. Inside, he found the bathroom taps fully open. Upon shutting off the water, he was alarmed by the sight of what appeared to be blood spatters on the wall, prompting him to exit promptly and dial 911. Inside Erica's chaotic apartment, officers endeavored to piece together the events. Signs of a violent altercation were evident, couch cushions tossed aside, belongings scattered, and bloodied walls alongside a shattered vanity mirror. Yet, a peculiar scene in the bathtub, a cushion floating atop water alongside a sports bag, echoed the haunting familiarity of Brooke's case. This connection sparked an instinctual belief among the officers that the same individual might be linked to both incidents. Similar to Brooke's case, there was no evidence of forced entry, and it seemed the perpetrator had again attempted to obscure their actions. Unlike before, however, Erica's whereabouts remained unknown. Initiating the inquiry necessitated piecing together the chronology of Erica's final days. It was established that she had not been seen or heard from since the evening of Saturday, July 3, 1999. Erica had been working her shift as a waitress at a restaurant until roughly 10 p.m. that night. Following her shift, she joined friends at a bar, where they remained until it closed. Subsequently, Norman proposed gathering at her apartment to extend the celebration, but her companions, having commitments the next day, opted out. The last sighting of Erica was her entering Brian Jones's vehicle. Erica and Brian had a long-standing acquaintance, having first met while both were employed at Garfield's restaurant, Brian as a cook and Erica in another role. Though Erica later pursued different employment opportunities, they remained within the same social sphere. Jones had relocated to Vincennes for his college education, focusing on architectural drafting. Known for his academic dedication, he ultimately withdrew in 1996, lured away by a lucrative job opportunity that promised a significant salary at the time. During his college tenure, Brian had been in a relationship that lasted around 2 years before concluding. Residing merely 2 blocks from the campus, Brian, despite no longer being a student, remained an active participant in campus social life. His circle of friends consistently spoke highly of him, yet the detectives deemed it imperative to bring him in for interrogation. The guy was nervous, but recounted that he did indeed drive Erica home that evening to watch a movie together. However, he assured that she fell asleep midway through the film, and he had to leave. Brian did not hide the fact that he had tried to initiate intimacy with her, but she refused. Nevertheless, Jones readily provided a DNA sample for analysis. During the search, police officers inspected the area around her home, assuming that if the girl was no longer alive, the perpetrator would have had to move her body somewhere, but the search yielded nothing. However, the documents revealed a very interesting coincidence. It turned out that Brian Jones and Brooke Baker were also acquainted and had sometimes hung out together. The police found Brooke's former roommate and inquired about the nature of their relationship. Jason did not provide any new information, only mentioning that Brian had lived with him in the fall of 1997, around the time Baker moved out, but after the girl's death, the guy immediately left town. After speaking with Brian's former employers, the detectives learned that this was the well-paying job he had unexpectedly quit, leaving everything behind. After September 5, 1997, he did not show up for work and was automatically fired, while Baker's body was found on September 7, 1997. Since he was not a student at the time and had left town, the detectives had not paid him any attention. After a thorough inspection, a tiny blood spot was found on Brian's shoe. Analysis revealed that it was Erica Norman's blood, and the semen sample matched the DNA sample, number 137F. On July 13, 1999, Brian Jones was apprehended for the heinous killing of 19-year-old Brooke Baker. As Brian was moved from the detention center to the courthouse on the day of his indictment, attempts were made to hold back Brooke's mother, who sought to fiercely attack him. At the same time, the parents of Erica pleaded with law enforcement to locate their daughter, fearing she had met her demise and desiring to give her a dignified burial. Roughly a week later, on July 20th, an Illinois man contacted the authorities to report a grim find in a cornfield. 29-year-old James Hill, while fixing sprinklers at the periphery of the field, a task he typically undertook in September, but had shifted to midsummer due to certain issues, stumbled upon a dreadful odor and, upon investigation, discovered a badly decomposed corpse. Given the area's extreme heat and moisture, the remains would have disintegrated into the earth by fall, leaving no trace. This cornfield, situated just over the Wabash River which divides Indiana and Illinois, lay approximately 3 miles from the lost student's residence. A post-mortem examination verified the corpse as Erica Norman's. During his transfer to the court, Brian was clad in a protective vest. In an effort to evade the capital punishment, he entered a plea agreement, acknowledging his role in Erica's demise, while continuing to reject any participation in Brooke's killing. He was ultimately condemned to a term of 60 years for confessing to Erica's death, in addition to receiving a perpetual incarceration without the chance for parole for the murder of Brooke Baker. The narrative unraveled as a young man began monitoring the life of a budding journalist by settling into the residence previously occupied by her roommate. Brian absorbed every detail of a looming scandal linked to fraternity misconduct she was probing. He aimed to capitalize on Brooke's vulnerability. She might have initially suspected those who had menaced her, ultimately casting suspicion on the entire college community, but an error occurred, and Brian took her life. He was convinced of his ability to elude capture, given his lack of affiliation with the school and the fraternity, the latter being the initial prime suspects due to their intimidation of the victim. His misdeed could have gone undetected if not for his acquired penchant for violence and his false sense of invulnerability, leading him to commit a subsequent murder mirroring the first. Erica's demise was necessary for the apprehension of the perpetrator behind another's, Brooke Baker's, murder. Brian refrained from testifying in court, but years afterward, he penned a letter to the Baker family, seeking clemency for his heinous acts. Nonetheless, his regret cannot restore the lives of the 2 young girls. A mysterious chain of events that occurred in the north of British Columbia has sparked interest not only in Canada, but around the world. Who could possibly be bothered by loving tourists, a couple of teenagers, and an elderly botany professor? And how could these people be connected in any way? The narrative unfolds in northern British Columbia, Canada, during the sweltering month of July in 2019. This region, renowned for its breathtaking vistas that extend to the borders of Yukon and Alaska, is enveloped by forests, valleys, volcanic rock landscapes, and mountain ranges. It presents travelers with a plethora of outdoor pursuits, ranging from trekking and angling to skiing and open water swimming. A young duo, eager to embrace all that British Columbia has to offer, embarked on their eagerly anticipated getaway to revel in the wilderness's splendor. Chynna, Deese, 24, and Lucas Fowler, 23, were the embodiment of youthful adventure and freedom. Lucas, hailing from a large family in Sydney, Australia, and the son of New South Wales Chief Police Inspector, had cultivated a love for travel early on, which eventually became his life's purpose. As he matured, his ambition was to explore as many diverse places on Earth as possible. Engaging in activities like hiking, camping, surfing, and swimming was integral to Lucas's lifestyle. His quest for adventure led him on a 2-year globe-trotting backpacking journey. In 2017, during a stop in Croatia, Lucas encountered another significant passion, Chynna Deese, a North Carolinian studying in Europe and working on a vineyard farm to fund her travels. Over a few years, Deese managed to visit 13 countries. Their shared passion for exploration bonded them so tightly that they quickly became a pair, with their families also forming a close bond. Their loved ones were convinced that the couple's relationship would thrive beyond the mundane, filled with bliss and overcoming any hurdles. Stephen, Lucas's father, remarked that Chynna became a part of their family the moment she captured Lucas's heart. Both sets of parents rejoiced in their children's partnership, recognizing them as an ideally matched pair. Despite the considerable distance between them, Chynna and Lucas maintained a strong connection, spending hours on the phone reminiscing about past adventures and eagerly planning future ones. During their 2 years together, they explored Central and South America, Japan, and Southeast Asia. They celebrated Christmas in America with Chynna's family before Lucas took a job at a ranch in British Columbia. Now, with a visa in hand, the vast distance that once seemed daunting was no longer an insurmountable barrier, making it much easier for them to bridge the gap. Several months later, the duo planned a modest vacation together. Chynna reunited with Lucas, and they resolved to explore the provinces of Western Canada that summer. The pair were keen to visit Canada's national parks, aiming to conclude their journey in Alaska. They had been looking forward to this expedition for months, anticipating the joy of being together again. Fowler had fixed up his blue 1986 Chevrolet minivan, and now they embarked on their adventure. On the night of July 13, 2019, the couple made a stop at a service station in Fort Nelson, British Columbia. Security footage showed them inseparable, oblivious to their surroundings. These clips would later be scrutinized repeatedly by both law enforcement and family members. Chynna consistently updated her mother, Sheila, on their trip's progress. In her final text, she mentioned they would soon be unreachable to keep her mother from worrying. Roughly 200 miles from the service station, their vehicle encountered a pothole and broke down. This occurred on July 14th along the Alaska Highway, also known as Highway 97, near the sought-after Liard River Hot Springs tourist spot. As Lucas lifted the hood to diagnose the issue, another vehicle pulled up. The driver, Charles, noticed their malfunctioning van and offered assistance. Yet Fowler, with a smile, assured him they had everything under control. He stated his intent to attempt repairs and, failing that, to call for a tow truck the next day upon reaching an area with phone service. Charles mentioned he'd be camping with friends a few miles away and would pass by again the next day, offering help if needed. After exchanging goodbyes, he drove off. The lovers paused at the roadside, bringing along some provisions, which helped them serenely face a scenario likely to frazzle many. Yet, they savored each moment of their voyage, even these unforeseen and unfortunate events. Around midnight of that day, while the travelers were still fussing over their blue van, a road repair worker happened by. She spotted a bearded individual conversing with Chynna and Lucas. From a distance, their dialogue seemed fraught, with the bearded man noticeably perturbed by something. The worker did not intervene, however. This roadside incident left her with an uneasy feeling for some reason. She later recollected that the van's right side doors were wide open, and a gray automobile of another individual was parked nearby. On July 15th at 6:20 a.m., a trucker on Highway 97 spotted an alarming scene ahead. Drawing nearer, he was horrified to find two individuals lying face down in a ditch. It was Chynna and Lucas, positioned about 9 feet from their blue van and approximately 13 feet away from each other. They were unresponsive and cold to the touch, exhibiting no signs of life. The trucker then took to the road, desperately signaling to oncoming drivers for assistance, imploring them to make emergency calls. Following this, the police were alerted by a wave of calls about the event, with law enforcement arriving on site at 7:20 a.m. The responding officers observed the trucker attempting to navigate through the distressing situation he had encountered. It was determined that Chynna and Lucas had succumbed to gunshot wounds, as indicated by the autopsy showing entry and exit points. The van's doors remained ajar, with its rear window smashed. Close by, investigators found 5 spent bullet casings and Deese's mobile phone, though Fowler's mobile remained unaccounted for. Just after 9 a.m., Charles, along with other vacationers who had interacted with the couple the previous day, returned as they had promised, only to be met with police barricades, leading to disbelief at the grim development. While the police withheld specifics, the proximity of the assailant became a growing worry. In an effort to gather evidence, detectives appealed to anyone who had traveled this segment of the Alaska Highway 97 from the evening of July 14th to the next morning, to share any dashcam footage with the authorities. The heinous murder of an Australian man and an American woman in Canada quickly escalated into a high-profile international case, attracting extensive media coverage. Promptly, Fowler's father, a distinguished police official in Australia, reached out for details about the catastrophic event that befell his son and his partner. Canadian detectives clarified that this incident appeared to be an isolated event, emphasizing their commitment to capturing the culprit as a paramount concern. As whispers about the Alaska Highway 97 event began circulating, a bystander who had witnessed Chynna and Lucas conversing with a bearded individual approached the authorities with a description. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police then produced a composite sketch from this account and circulated it through the media. This development struck a chord in Australia, leading Australian law enforcement to extend their assistance to their Canadian counterparts. They aimed to support their fellow officer, Stephen Fowler, grieving his son's loss. Consequently, the commissioner dispatched 2 detectives to aid in the probe and foster liaison. In a separate account, another individual, who had pulled over in the vicinity for a brief rest, reached out to the police. He recounted that, shortly after he stopped, a compact van pulled up some 150 feet away. From the van, a man wielding a rifle emerged from the passenger side and began advancing towards him, weapon poised. At the same time, the truck he was in started to reverse in his direction. Fearful for his safety, the witness accelerated and fled the scene, unable to identify the individuals or muster the courage to investigate further. With the inquiry still in its nascent phase, it remained uncertain whether Lucas and Chynna were specifically targeted or had merely been at the wrong place at an inopportune time. Up to that moment, there was no evidence linking their demise to any other criminal activities in the region. The authorities characterized the incident as an isolated occurrence within northern British Columbia. The tragic demise of the young couple plunged their families into profound sorrow. They had journeyed across the globe, and it was unfathomable that 2 young lovers, yet to experience the joys of marriage, would have their lives cut short so abruptly. Stephen Fowler, actively serving as a police officer, alongside his Canadian peers, dedicated their efforts to unraveling the case's specifics and bringing the culprits to justice. However, this sorrowful event marked the onset of a chain of occurrences that captured global attention. Merely 5 days subsequent, on July 19th, another disturbing incident took place approximately 300 miles from where Deese and Fowler's bodies were discovered, close to Deese Lake in British Columbia. A charred van was found, with its license plate sufficiently intact for a database match. The vehicle was registered to 19-year-old Cam McLeod, who had embarked on a road trip with his best friend, 18-year-old Briar Schmigelski. Both hailing from Vancouver Island and co-workers at Walmart, they had recently resigned from their positions to pursue job opportunities in Yukon. Departing on July 12th, their parents described their venture as impromptu, yet supportive of their son's plans. Their last known whereabouts were at a locale known as Jade City, where they paused for coffee. The proprietor recalled their visit, noting no peculiarities about their demeanor or any apparent troubles. Now the pair had disappeared, leaving behind their incinerated vehicle. In close proximity to the teenagers' scorched van, roughly a mile away, a deceased man with gunshot injuries was found, bereft of any identification. Authorities disseminated a sketch and a description of the man, presumed to be between 50 and 60 years old, sporting a large gray beard. Despite the considerable distance, almost an 8-hour drive from where Lucas and Chynna's bodies were located, there lingered the possibility of a link between these incidents. Additionally, a segment on the 48 Hours show touched upon the notorious and isolated stretch known as the Highway of Tears, highlighting that over the past 40 years, at least 18 women had either vanished or been discovered deceased along this route. In the midst of piecing together the connections among these unfolding events, the victims' friends and family members were desperate for clarity. As law enforcement intensified their efforts to locate the vanished youths, Chynna and Lucas's relatives arrived in Canada, confronting the grim duty of bringing their loved ones home. Alan Schmigelski, father of Briar, shared that his son's final message hinted at sporadic communication due to unreliable cellular service. He harbored concerns that the boys might have stumbled upon a crime scene and, as a result, met with misfortune themselves. He emphasized that they were virtuous individuals who had steered clear of trouble prior to this. Cam McLeod's last communication with his family was on July 17th, informing them of his and Briar's arrival in Yukon, their intended destination. The rationale behind their continued journey remained enigmatic, spawning ever-increasing queries. Within days, a trio of lives were claimed, and 2 young men went missing under dire circumstances. The publication of the third victim's sketch prompted a call from a woman named Helen, identifying the depicted individual as potentially her husband, 64-year-old Leonard Dyke. Leonard had embarked on a hiking excursion shortly before and maintained regular contact with Helen and their kids until the night of July 18th, after which all communication ceased. While awaiting DNA confirmation, the authorities were persuaded they had identified Leonard. Renowned for his dedication as a husband, his devotion as a father, and his reputation as a respected botany lecturer at the University of British Columbia, Leonard was beloved by his students for his enthusiastic approach to science. His ability to vivify plant studies encouraged many to pursue further discoveries. Leonard's remarkable sense of humor, transforming even the most mundane lectures into captivating narratives, along with his hobbies like drawing, writing, playing the guitar, and his passion for the outdoors, were cherished aspects of his personality. Despite his ease in addressing large student groups, Leonard was notably reserved and introverted in his personal life, which partly explained his fondness for solitary treks. Leonard had recently celebrated his birthday on July 16th. With a lightweight camping stove, provisions, a tent, and his Toyota, he set out, eager to immerse himself in nature. He expressed to his wife his hopes of either photographing a grizzly bear or deepening his understanding of the wilderness. On July 21st, video evidence from Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan, surfaced, significantly altering the course of the investigation. The footage showcased a gray 2011 Toyota, owned by 64-year-old Leonard Dyke, a university lecturer in botany, being driven by Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski, the previously thought to be missing teenagers. The video captured Cameron and Briar purchasing black tape, later used to obscure parts of the car in an ill-fated attempt at camouflage. Subsequent to a thorough investigation of their charred van, conducted under safe conditions, law enforcement discovered ammunition matching that found at both crime scenes. This discovery led the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to issue a stunning public announcement, soliciting assistance in apprehending the suspects linked to the recent northern British Columbia incidents. Cam and Briar were reclassified from missing persons to prime suspects in the homicides of 3 individuals. Contrary to the earlier narrative, where both teenagers were the subjects of widespread concern and hopes for their safety, they were now identified as the perpetrators behind the tragic deaths of Lucas, Chynna, and Leonard. Cam was duly licensed for the acquisition and storage of firearms, and prior to their departure from Vancouver Island, they had procured a semi-automatic SKS rifle along with 20 rounds of ammunition. Just before the authorities publicized the manhunt for the 2 teens implicated in grave offenses, Cameron and Briar underwent a routine alcohol inspection by security personnel in Split Lake, Manitoba. Found to be sober and without alcohol, they were released, unbeknownst to the officers that they were engaging with fugitives. Remarkably, the teens evaded capture, leaving their exact location at that juncture a matter of speculation. The next day, on July 23rd, inhabitants of Manitoba stumbled upon a gray Toyota, which was also discovered burned in a wooded area. Adjacent to the vehicle, remnants of partially consumed pork chops, cookware, orange peels, keys, matches, and assorted tools were found. The car's license plate was traced back to Leonard Dyke, and subsequent DNA testing confirmed the grim anticipation of his wife Helen, identifying the third casualty as her spouse. Within 2 days, the law enforcement escalated their efforts, issuing arrest warrants against the duo and formally naming them as suspects in the ruthless slaying of 3 individuals. The manhunt converged on a small community named Gillam, close to the location of Leonard Dyke's charred vehicle. Gillam, with a population of fewer than 1,500 people, is reachable by a singular roadway, making it the strategic epicenter for the police operation. The vicinity was thoroughly sealed off, with local authorities urging the populace to remain vigilant, secure their homes continuously, and venture outside only when absolutely necessary. Search units diligently canvassed the surrounding terrain in an exhaustive sweep. Upon learning of his son's implication in a string of atrocious acts from the news, Breyer's father, Alan, was plunged into disbelief. In a parallel development, Cam's girlfriend reached out to the police, conveying a text message from him declaring his non-return. In Gillam, law enforcement was convinced that, bereft of transportation, and with the global community's eyes trained on them, the young fugitives were likely concealed within the vicinity. The police presence in the town surged from a handful to a robust force of officers patrolling the streets around the clock. The search operation, extending over a week, incorporated military drones, helicopters, canine units, and a substantial human contingent. Yet, as no evidence of their whereabouts emerged, a portion of the search resources was scaled back. The families of both teenagers issued heartfelt appeals for their return, urging them to surrender so matters could be resolved collectively. Alan Schmigelski, however, harbored fears that his son might seek an end in a police standoff, envisioning a tragically heroic demise, a notion that deeply distressed him. In an unexpected turn, the Bear Clan Patrol, a community vigilance group, reported sighting 2 lanky figures scavenging near a landfill, then fleeing into the forest. This occurred in York Landing, situated nearly 80 miles from the primary search zone, though this lead ultimately proved fruitless. Meanwhile, the residents of the tranquil community yearned for the conclusion of this ordeal, anxious for a return to normalcy after being on high alert for a week. Billy Beardy, the discoverer of Leonard Dyke's charred car and an expert in the local geography, played a pivotal role in the search effort. He practically spearheaded the search teams, guiding them through the terrain and suggesting strategic search locations. While navigating the Nelson River's banks aboard boats, the search party found Cam's backpack, containing ammunition, his wallet, and apparel, along with Leonard's toiletry bag and a sleeping bag. Billy observed that these items appeared intentionally abandoned, not merely washed up ashore, indicating that the teenagers, now on foot and possibly fatigued, were discarding non-essential items. The area's challenging terrain, characterized by marshlands, dense insect populations, and the presence of bears, compounded by intense heat, made survival exceedingly difficult. Billy remarked that venturing into such hostile environments unaided and uninformed was virtually suicidal, as even local residents steered clear of these formidable landscapes. On August 2nd, the search operation's scope included aerial surveillance over the Nelson River's banks, where a damaged boat was detected. Billy, entrusted with navigating the jet boats carrying a team from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, embarked on another journey down the river. During this patrol, a raven's abrupt descent into a coastal gully piqued his curiosity, hinting at the presence of carrion. This intuitive observation proved pivotal when, on August 7, 2019, exactly at the spot Billy had marked due to the raven's activity, law enforcement discovered human remains. In a dense thicket near a stream by the Nelson River, close to where the teenagers' burned vehicle was located in Gillam, lay the bodies of Cam McLeod, 19, and Briar Schmigelski, 18, marking the culmination of a nationwide manhunt nearly 2,000 miles from the saga's inception. For over half a day, Billy Beardy was instrumental in facilitating the movement of police and forensic experts across the river, acknowledged by officers as indispensable to their efforts. The timing of the duo's deaths was unclear, but the forensic examination concluded that Cam had fatally shot Briar and then himself, presumably in fulfillment of a mutual pact. Found near Cam's body was one rifle, with another still clasped in his hands. Additionally, a digital camera owned by Leonard Dyke was discovered in proximity, housing 6 video recordings and 3 photographs, including one of Briar brandishing a semi-automatic rifle and a selfie of Cam. In the initial video, the teenagers confessed to all 3 murders without delving into their motives. Briar, addressing the camera in a subsequent clip, disclosed their intention to flee via the Nelson River, albeit contemplating suicide due to the formidable currents. A later video saw them vacillating, plotting to continue their killing spree across Europe or Africa by boat. Nonetheless, subsequent recordings reverted to their original resolution to end their lives, with a request for cremation upon discovery. The discovery of the videos left the authorities to characterize the footage as chilling and devoid of empathy. Briar's father, reeling from the revelations, expressed a desire to view the recordings firsthand. The police assessed that both youths were complicit and willingly participated in their actions, without clear evidence of a dominant influencer. Despite intense public curiosity and media scrutiny, the decision was made not to release the footage, respecting the victims' families and preventing the glorification of the perpetrators' actions, which could potentially spur similar incidents. The investigation uncovered disturbing facets of Briar's character, including a fascination with Nazi ideology and a collection of related memorabilia, alongside a long-standing interest in weaponry. Alan Schmigelski, Briar's father, recounted how his son became increasingly withdrawn, turning to online content and video games for comfort post-divorce, seldom engaging socially or expressing his emotions. Briar had even speculated with friends about the real-life application of scenarios encountered in video games, displaying a troubling enthusiasm. Cam's relatives were dumbfounded, unable to reconcile the actions attributed to the gentle and respectful young man they knew. Both families grappled with profound regret over their failure to recognize the dark path their sons had embarked on. The summer of 2019 witnessed an unprecedented manhunt across Canada, culminating in an enigmatic close with no discernible motives or explanations forthcoming. Billy Beardy emerged as a key figure in the resolution of the case, later receiving recognition from the Keewatin Tribal Council for his pivotal role in the search efforts. Honored with a star blanket and an eagle feather, he was celebrated as a community stalwart. Beardy's alert response to the Ravens' activity underscored his invaluable contribution, without which the pursuit might have prolonged indefinitely. This tragic sequence of events, resulting in the loss of 5 lives, leaves a lasting imprint of sorrow. The families of those lost hope for their loved ones to be remembered, not for the manner of their passing, but for their lives filled with joy, inspiration, and resolve. It's advised to select your enemies carefully, and your friends as well, since friends can turn into enemies. This tale is about a woman's friendship that ended tragically. Today's tale centers on Renae Marsden from Sydney, Australia, who was raised alongside her 3 siblings in the nurturing household of Teresa and Mark Marsden. This family was characterized by its warm ambiance, yet Renae shared a particularly close bond with her mother. Teresa spoke of her daughter as an exceedingly kind, joyful, and tender-hearted young woman. In 2010, as Renae celebrated her 18th birthday, she juggled roles as both a hairdresser and an administrator at a salon. It was here she encountered Angus, a colleague. Initially, they barely noticed each other, but eventually, Angus realized he was in love. Garnering the courage to express his feelings to Renae, he was delighted to discover she reciprocated. Shortly after, they became inseparable, quickly making plans for their life together. Nevertheless, their romance was abruptly shattered. Renae was devastated by a message from Angus, confessing he had merely been using her, wasn't prepared for commitment, and had desires for other women. This revelation turned Renae's world on its head, making her once orderly life, aspirations, and cherished moments feel utterly insignificant. She retreated from the world, forsaking food and the outdoors, preferring the solitude of her blanket. Renae shared a close bond with her high school pal, Camila Zaidan. Despite their lives taking them in different directions, Camila immediately rushed to Renae's side when she heard about her breakup. Eager to cheer Renae up and help her navigate her heartache, Zaidan suggested she begin mingling with new men. Specifically, she had someone in mind whom she thought would be an excellent rebound for Renae. This person was Braden Spiteri, Camilla's ex, with whom things hadn't worked out due to a lack of compatibility. Nevertheless, Camilla was convinced that Braden and Renae were a perfect match and encouraged her friend to pursue him, confident he'd make an ideal companion for Renae. Initially hesitant to engage with anyone, Marsden had little interest in meeting men. Yet, as the sharp sting of her recent breakup began to fade, she opted to take a chance on the enigmatic Braden, sparking their phone-based romance. From their very first exchange, Renae sensed a profound bond with him. Without having met him face-to-face, she already felt that deep, unspoken connection one finds with a soulmate. Their conversations were ceaseless, spanning day and night, filled with endless texts across social networks. At 23, Spiteri was a product of a prestigious Royal Academy and belonged to a rich family that owned a thriving construction business. Discussing Braden with her mother, Teresa, Renae couldn't help but flush with embarrassment. To her, he appeared flawless. They shared numerous interests, and Braden aspired for the same life goals that Renae cherished. The sole issue was Braden's consistent unavailability for dates. He never outright rejected meeting up, yet there always seemed to be a reason they couldn't spend time together. In the early days of 2012, a few weeks into their budding romance, Renae embarked on a 2-week familial cruise, during which she was unreachable due to the absence of cell service. Returning home, she was confronted with harrowing news from Braden. Previously, he and a dear friend had been implicated in a grave motorcycle mishap. His friend perished, and Spiteri was at the helm. The inquiry concluded his lack of attentiveness behind the wheel had led to manslaughter charges against him. Amid the ongoing court procedures and hearings, he refrained from disclosing this to her, fearing it might alienate the woman he was fond of. However, with his sentencing to 2 years imprisonment, he found it impossible to keep her uninformed any longer. Renae was heartbroken by the dreadful news but chose to persist in the relationship. Once Braden was detained and confined in Goulburn Correctional Center, he gained access to a telephone, which enabled them to rejuvenate their connection and elevate their communication through text messages, as making phone calls was perilous for him. Braden declined the opportunity for visitations to shorten his sentence, aiming to be released by Renae's 21st birthday, envisioning a celebration together. Renae completely understood and was prepared to make sacrifices, at least temporarily. She was convinced the 2 years would pass quickly, after which they would wed, and nothing would keep them apart. For their shared future, she was willing to accept certain limitations, knowing that navigating this challenging time was essential. Even with Spiteri imprisoned, they dedicated ample time to online conversations about their wedding, honeymoon, and life thereafter. Renae even reached out to the consulate to confirm if Braden could travel internationally for their honeymoon, despite his past offenses. Braden managed to send her bouquets and presents to charm his partner. Acknowledging the difficulty she faced due to the lack of physical closeness, he proposed she fulfill her sensual desires not with other individuals, but with her closest friend, Camilla. He expressed no objections if Marsden accepted this proposition, yet Renae firmly declined, choosing to await his homecoming. Conversely, Camilla appeared quite taken with the notion of closeness with Renae, frequently questioning the specifics of Renae's exchanges with Braden. probing how Marsden dealt with her sensual needs, and at times, becoming overly inquisitive. Chynna rang multiple times daily, and if Renae didn't respond, she would flood her friend with countless texts. Oddly, Chynna started displaying envy towards Renae's other companions, and would even complain if Renae spent a whole day with her mother, Teresa. One evening, Chynna dialed Renae's number 54 times, leading to Marsden addressing her clingy conduct the next day, labeling it as excessive. Rather than offering an apology for her actions, Chynna turned up at Renae's doorstep, initiated a quarrel, and resorted to verbal hostility, a surprising behavior from someone deemed a close friend. Following a heated exchange, Chynna made an unexpected move to kiss Renae, which Renae rebuffed, citing her exclusive attraction to men. Nevertheless, Zidane managed to convince her to partake in a physical encounter. Post this event, Renae consulted with her mother, Teresa, divulging their experimentation but stressed that her preferences did not align with same-sex relationships, a stance she quickly made clear to Chynna. They agreed to overlook the episode and move past it. Yet, Zidane's peculiar actions persisted. Renae even shared emails from Chynna with her mother, wherein Chynna confessed her deep love and yearning for a union, insisting that Renae couldn't deny her affections and that no one else could love her more profoundly. She threatened to shadow Renae persistently if spurned, vowing to be an incessant presence until Renae consented to be her companion. Teresa, alarmed by these admissions, urged her daughter to sever the bond and steer clear of providing any grounds to prolong their association, comforting her with the notion that Chynna would eventually settle down, find a male partner, and abandon her illusions. Nonetheless, Renae hesitated to abruptly conclude their friendship. Teresa then implored her to proceed with utmost caution. Teresa's maternal instincts were validated when Renae found herself compelled to terminate the long-standing friendship for her own well-being, which led to Chynna reacting with rage, bitterness, anxiety, yet continuing her dogged pursuit of Marsden. Initially, Renae chose to disregard Chynna's attempts at communication. Simultaneously, her connection with Braden began to suffer, especially when Braden frequently brought up Chynna, suggesting Renae mend their friendship. Despite Renae's attempts to dissolve their relationship due to Braden's incessant urging, unforeseen calamities in Braden's life made her reconsider each time, pulling her back due to her compassionate nature. Firstly, Braden disclosed his mother's diagnosis with a brain tumor, a situation he found distressing as he couldn't support her physically. Another incident saw Braden becoming the victim of an assault in prison, leaving him severely wounded. Renae perceived Braden's influence as increasingly detrimental and was on the verge of breaking away, yet unforeseeable events and her parents' advice to either leave Braden or consider other suitors kept her from making a final decision. Her parents hoped that diminishing her emotional ties with Braden would encourage her to permanently sever their relationship. In his attempt at reconciliation, Braden proactively contacted her parents, trying to assure them of his good intentions and compatibility with Renae. He persisted in sending romantic messages to Renae, urging her to reconcile with Chynna and to forgive her, which eventually led to Renae re-establishing her bond with Chynna, the one supporter of her relationship with Braden. 3 months into their rekindled relationship, an utterly smitten Renae, with Chynna for emotional backing, ventured to a tattoo parlor and had Spiteri inked on the right side of her chest. One day, while navigating social media, Teresa, the mother of Renae, chanced upon a photo uploaded by Renae's former beau, Angus. She appreciated the image without any hidden intentions. Braden, noticing Teresa's online action, interpreted it as an intentional move to reignite a spark between Angus and Renae. He sent Teresa a highly aggressive and insulting message, denouncing her for disloyalty and criticizing her mothering skills for not endorsing her daughter's affection towards Spiteri. His message was filled with fury and contained several harsh remarks. This episode further deteriorated the parents' opinion of Renae's partner, considering him to be discourteous and conceited. Although Renae tried to mend the situation, Teresa stood her ground. Only after several months did the mother consent to engage in a discussion with Braden, proposing a condition that would allow Renae some autonomy while he remained incarcerated. If their bond endured this period, Teresa would reconsider her stance on him. To everyone's astonishment, the young man concurred. He reassured Renae of his undying love and intention to wed her upon his release, but in the meantime, he bestowed her with total freedom. Seizing this chance, Renae soon began a relationship with a co-worker named Ian. The Marsdens were delighted, finding Ian to be a stark contrast to Braden. He was courteous and calm. They were hopeful for a new beginning, yet Spiteri, vigilantly observing Renae's life, noticed the shift. Discovering Ian, he started menacing him online, attempting to dissuade him from pursuing Renae, despite having granted her freedom. Renae implored Braden to cease his intimidations towards Ian, yet in time, she and Braden found a way back to communicating regularly, now under the guise of friendship. Renae maintained her calm and continued her liaison with Ian, believing she had amicably resolved matters with Spiteri. In October 2012, on a work-related journey, she snapped a selfie in her hotel chamber close to a mirror and shared it on a social platform, unprepared for Braden's reaction. He spotted a pair of men's footwear in the image's backdrop and erupted in a jealous fury, charging her with being unfaithful. Renae found herself once again in the position of pacifier, clarifying that the shoes belonged to Ian, yet Spiteri's agitation persisted, and he even managed to secure Ian's contact details to menace him. Despite Braden's interference, Renae and Ian's bond flourished into an engagement during the festive period, though Braden's continuous involvement became a contentious point, prompting Ian to demand a choice between him and Braden. With Braden's impending release in the fall of 2013, Renae deliberated her options, but ultimately gravitated towards Braden, whom she deemed her soulmate. Endeavoring to mend their partnership proved arduous. Renae wrestled with emotional distress. Braden divulged that his father expected him to helm the family's lucrative construction venture upon his return, an aspiration he did not share. When Renae proposed he give his father's offer some thought, Braden lambasted her for being acquisitive and superficial, accusing her of pursuing the relationship solely for financial advantage, oblivious to his psychological and emotional state. Moreover, he perpetually berated her for her past with Ian, branding it as unfaithfulness and leveraging guilt. Caught in this toxic vortex, Renae felt immobilized, yet Braden occasionally reverted to a tender and nurturing demeanor, ensnaring her in a cycle of emotional exploitation. In the summer of 2013, as Camilla embarked on a family vacation to the USA, Renae found the perfect moment to finally break off her friendship with her for good. Distance made the separation easier, particularly because Zaidan had reverted to her earlier manipulative and possessive tactics, prompting Renae to feel apprehensive of her. Immediately after Camilla's arrival in the USA, Renae messaged her, requesting she cease all contact and act as if they were strangers should they cross paths in the future. Amid this personal upheaval, Braden informed Renae of his impending communication blackout due to a hearing for potential early release, leaving her isolated just as she had distanced herself from Camilla. This period of solitude saw Renae consistently sending Braden heartfelt texts, despite the absence of his responses, clinging to hope for any sign of communication. Her patience was tested until she finally received a reply from him, only to be taken aback by its curt and unsympathetic nature. That same day, Teresa was startled by a message from Spiteri, alleging that Renae was a risk to herself. This prompted a concerned confrontation between Teresa and Renae, who clarified that her relationship with Braden was over, but assured there was no truth to the self-harm claims. Eager to delve deeper, Renae confided in her mother her realization of Braden's true character and reiterated her well-being. Subsequently, she prepared herself for a night out with friends, stepping out in search of comfort and diversion amidst their company. On August 5, 2013, at precisely 5:49 p.m., Renae dispatched a heartfelt and lengthy message to her mother, conveying her affection and seeking pardon. Teresa promptly attempted to reach out to her daughter by phone, yet received no response. In a bid to grasp the situation, she contacted Camilla, who, although they hadn't spoken lately, had gotten a similar note. Camilla proposed they search for Renae at a likely spot, guiding them to a residence where, as Zidane informed, resided Braden's sister, but to no avail. Subsequently, Teresa informed the authorities of her daughter's absence, and eventually, police discovered Renae's vehicle in the secluded Watson's Bay, far from the urban center. Found within the automobile was an unused mobile phone of the past 2 months, a Valentine's card from Braden, and a photo montage of him. Etched in the dust on the vehicle's window read, "I love you, Braden." The Marsden clan, along with several kin, ventured to Watson's Bay to seek Renae, uncovering her black ballet shoes. At that juncture, law enforcement was sealing the vicinity for investigation and advised the kin to await results at home. Teresa, restless, attempted reaching Braden, who neither answered calls nor acknowledged the vexed messages she dispatched, persuaded of his role in her daughter's vanishing. Subsequently, Renae's father made inquiries at the detention facility purported to detain Spiteri, only to learn no inmate bore that identity. Mark forthwith relayed his doubts to the police. When law enforcement initially probed Watson's Bay, Renae wasn't located, but they did uncover CCTV footage depicting her final moments. She was seen walking alone to a cliff's edge, leaping over a safety fence, pausing to look down, then using her phone to send 3 last texts before tossing it into the sea and following it herself. Her body was never recovered. Devastated by her abrupt disappearance, her family grappled with the reality that Renae might be gone forever. Their focus shifted to uncovering the recipients of her final messages and their contents. Investigation revealed Renae had sent 91 texts to Braden before departing for Watson's Bay, with silence from him until just before she jumped, when she finally received a response. A peculiar similarity was detected in the grammatical patterns of texts from both Camilla and Braden, along with mirrored mood fluctuations. If Camilla displayed hostility towards Renae, Braden exhibited anger, and vice versa. Despite originating from 2 distinct numbers, the messages were traced back to a single sender, revealing Braden Spiteri as a fictitious entity created by Camilla. Among the last communications on Renae's phone was a message from Braden, breaking off their 18-month relationship, claiming he needed space. This led to Renae experiencing a severe emotional crisis, witnessed by her colleagues as she shook and wept uncontrollably. After regaining some composure, she made a brief 90-second call to the prison, ostensibly to Braden, as per the call records. A subsequent house search of Zidane's under warrant resulted in the seizure of multiple mobile phones, a ripped letter from Renae to Braden, and another letter intact from Camilla, expressing gratitude to Renae for introducing her to her soulmate, vowing repayment. Additionally, the man believed to be Braden in photos, actually named Cameron, was discovered to be uninvolved, his identity unknowingly exploited in the fictitious relationship. Renae spent the last 18 months of her life believing she was in love, only to discover on the day of her death that Braden wasn't real. Camilla confessed to deceiving her best friend by pretending to be Braden. However, since there were no laws in New South Wales at that time against catfishing, the police couldn't charge her. She hadn't extorted money from Marsden to be accused of fraud. All she did was for her own entertainment or pleasure. In 2020, Renae's parents convinced authorities to investigate their daughter's death and how Camilla directly contributed to it. Zidane was granted immunity in exchange for details of her deception. Camilla, who managed to escape accountability for her actions, claimed that she and Renae were in love. Because the Marsden family would never have accepted their relationship, they supposedly invented the character of Braden as a cover for their relationship. Camilla also insisted she had no idea Renae would take her own life, but the victim's relatives believed the breakup between Braden and Renae was revenge after Marsden definitively ended their friendship. Camilla was obsessively fixated on Renae but couldn't have her while remaining a woman, so she deceitfully involved her in these online relationships and created a male version of herself. Sadly, this cruel prank led to the death of a young woman. Currently, Camilla is known to have married, had a child, and is enjoying life, ultimately deciding to marry a man, realizing that same-sex romances were not her destiny. On the final day of June 2009, a wearisome odyssey concluded. At last, a much-anticipated tranquility enveloped the Shafia family. Sadly, this was merely a facade. The following day, word of a horrific incident involving numerous individuals swept across the city. Kingston, a Canadian city situated on the northeastern shore of Lake Ontario, was designated the inaugural capital of a unified Canada in 1841. Presently, Canada is home to 58 federal penitentiaries, with 9 situated in Kingston. During the summer of 2009, an event that was initially perceived as a tragic mishap took place in Kingston. 4 individuals, 3 adolescents and 1 adult, were discovered deceased in a vehicle submerged in water north of the city's locks. Yet, it wasn't long before law enforcement unearthed the truth. It was not an accident. Mohammed Shafia was born to a middle-class family in Kabul during the early 1950s. Lacking formal education, he left school before finishing the 7th grade. Despite this, he diligently worked his way up, eventually becoming a successful entrepreneur who transformed an electronics shop into a lucrative import-export venture. In 1979, Shafia wed his first wife, Rona, a retired Army colonel's daughter. Rona maintained a journal recounting her initial encounter with her husband and the subsequent years of maltreatment. The diary entries depict her life's progressive decline post-marriage. Regrettably, Rona's inability to conceive was a significant blow, leading the couple to spend 7 years seeking infertility treatments in India, none of which bore fruit. Their marriage continued to sour. Shafia escalated his mistreatment of Rona, engaging in relentless criticism. He barred her from visiting her mother, disparaged her culinary talents, and berated her domestic management. Overwhelmed, Rona proposed the idea of a second wife. Polygamy, being permissible in Afghanistan, led to Shafia marrying a 17-year-old named Tuoba in 1988. Shortly after their marriage, Tuoba became expectant, and by September 1989, they welcomed Zainab. Rona transitioned into a support role, aiding Tuoba with the newborn and household chores, all while clinging to the hope of bearing her own child. The dynamic between Shafia's wives was strained from the outset, further complicated by the arrival of more children. Rona endured ongoing derision and, more grievously, physical violence from Shafia. She chronicled in her diary how her life had been reduced to suffering. Amid the turmoil in Afghanistan, the Shafia family sought refuge in Pakistan before relocating to the United Arab Emirates. There, Mohammed established a new venture, leading to renewed business success. In Dubai, the Shafia children were introduced to Western culture for the first time. Despite the UAE's Islamic foundations, they attended a private American school, donning uniforms, mastering English, and interacting with peers globally. By 2007, having traversed much of the globe and resided in 5 distinct nations, Mohammed's affluence enabled him to participate in an investor migrant scheme in Canada, investing $2 million in a commercial complex and $200,000 in land for a family residence. The challenge arose from polygamy's conflict with Canadian law, potentially jeopardizing the agreements. Thus, Tuba was officially recognized as his wife, whereas Rona was later deemed Mohammed's cousin, purportedly arriving to serve as a nanny for the 7 children and assist with domestic tasks. Upon settling in Montreal, a city celebrated for its cosmopolitan and liberal ethos, Rona harbored aspirations for an improved existence. Yet, domestically, the most stringent Afghan customs prevailed. The Shafia women endured a life of confinement, devoid of autonomy. Mohammed initiated an import-export business specializing in apparel, domestic items, and construction materials. Adapting to Montreal's environment proved challenging. The children, accustomed to English education in Dubai, were now enrolled in a French language school. While Rona was fluent in French, her skills were largely overlooked, leaving her marginalized. Neither Mohammed nor Tuba spoke English or French, positioning the children as their interpreters. Awaiting their mansion's completion, the Shafias resided in a leased home, segmented into 4 bedrooms and 2 baths for 2 years, mostly leaving their furnishings from Dubai unpacked. Contrary to the lifestyle one might expect of an international businessman, the children slept on brown mats on the floor, underscoring a stark contrast to their previous life. Between 2007 and 2009, Mohammed primarily resided in Dubai instead of Montreal. Altogether, his time in Canada amounted to merely 6 months. Throughout these frequent international business journeys, his offspring Hamid assumed leadership within the household. Prior to relocating to Canada, Mohammed had set a principle that mandated educational achievement before any meetings. The eldest sibling kept a vigilant eye on his sisters, despite experiencing considerable liberty himself. Zainab and her younger sibling Sahar were fond of Western styles and took pleasure in mingling and interacting with fellow high school peers, which inevitably sparked severe turmoil within the family. Shafia, despite Zainab being the eldest, found herself concealing aspects of her life from her younger brother, even though they both were enrolled in the same school in Montreal. In February 2008, Zainab, then 18, captured the interest of Omar Wahid, a young Pakistani man, who expressed his affection by sending her a Valentine's Day card suggesting friendship. In a gesture of acceptance, he requested Zainab wear a white dress the following day. Zainab responded with a covert email, outlining the terms of their friendship and urging him to be mindful of her brother and to keep their association hidden from nosy observers. Their rare encounters, mainly in the library, were kept discreet. Zainab warned Omar of the dire consequences if her father discovered their rendezvous, fearing for her life at home. On an occasion when Zainab's parents were away in Dubai and her brother Hamid was at school, she seized the opportunity to have Omar visit. Rona was the only one at home, yet somehow Hamid learned of the visit. Upon discovering the concealed guest in the garage, he cordially shook his hand but requested he depart. He subsequently imposed a lockdown on Zainab, prohibiting her from exiting the home even for school until their parents' return. Zainab endured the following 10 months, isolated in her room, forbidden from stepping outside without a family member or reconnecting with Omar. Sahar, the younger sister, faced her own challenges. At 16, she was still adapting to life in Canada and was frustrated that her father insisted she wear a hijab, even though she aspired to embrace a Western lifestyle. At school, she would remove the hijab, let her hair loose, and put on makeup to blend in with the other teenagers. This subterfuge was soon discovered by her mother, who then took to personally escorting her children to and from school, ensuring she picked them up right after classes ended. Furthermore, she confronted a teacher for not monitoring the students closely enough. The Shafia siblings were forbidden from communicating with anyone outside the family or visiting friends. Battling depression, Sahar once attempted to poison herself by ingesting water mixed with silica gel. In a state of alarm, the sisters turned to their mother, Tuuba, who reacted coldly, suggesting Sahar was destined for damnation. Subsequently, Sahar reached out to her teachers for support, disclosing that she was frequently subjected to physical punishment at home and surveilled by family members at school. She also revealed her attempt at suicide. The school principal, deeply troubled, contacted Child Social Services. However, the intervention by the social worker dispatched to the Shafia residence failed to yield any positive outcomes. Confronted by an enraged father, Sahar was compelled to withdraw her allegations, leading to the discontinuation of the case without any further investigation. Life in the Shafia home remained unchanged. During this period, Rona occupied her time by strolling through parks and using public phones to communicate with relatives overseas. She eventually got in touch with a Virginia-based advocate for Afghan women's rights. Though they never met face-to-face, over the course of a year, Rona reached out to her as many as 3 times a week, expressing her desire for a divorce but fearing for her children's well-being. Her husband, dismissive and derogatory towards her, adamantly refused to release her and threatened harm if she attempted to leave. Moreover, Rona was in Canada under a repeatedly extended tourist visa. Exposure of the Shafia household's internal strife could potentially risk deportation for them all. The one aspect of life Muhammad failed to dominate was the advent of modern technology. A few months on, upon turning 19, Zainab was permitted to resume her education at a different school, attending morning sessions solo and evening French classes with either Hamid or her mother. Zainab hadn't forgotten Omar, and after a year of no contact, reached out to him via email, rekindling their clandestine meetings. Additionally, Zainab introduced Sahar to her classmate, Ricardo Sanchez, a 21-year-old recent Honduran immigrant. Occasionally, they went on double dates. Ricardo and Sahar cherished every moment together. Once, Ricardo observed bruises on Sahar's body, which she attributed to an accidental fall, never disclosing the household violence she endured. Thus, he was led to believe their relationship must remain hidden due to religious disparities. Besides Zainab, Ricardo was acquainted with another sister, Hidi, who at 13 was beginning to push back against familial expectations. Having never lived in Afghanistan and educated in a Dubai private school, Heidi showed little interest in her father's strict cultural practices, favoring instead makeup and trendy attire, much like her elder sisters. In protest against punitive measures, she frequently skipped classes. Despite her father's complaints to the school, Heidi's rebellious stance persisted. On a spring evening in April 2009, Hidi, along with her younger brother and sister, lingered too long at a mall, unwittingly becoming the targets of their father Muhammad's and brother Hamid's wrath in a severe outburst. Enraged, the duo verbally and physically assaulted the children, with Zainab looking on, powerless to shield her younger siblings. This incident prompted Zainab to make a drastic decision to flee her oppressive home environment. Despite seeking assistance from her boyfriend Omar and facing his initial reluctance, she was adamant about leaving, citing her inability to endure their circumstances any longer. The prospect of marriage between Omar and Zainab was bleak, given their parents' anticipated disapproval. Ultimately, Omar had no option but to help Zainab escape, despite his lack of resources. On April 17, 2009, the Shafia household was plunged into turmoil. Hamid alerted the authorities of his sister's disappearance. The revelation of Zainab's escape left the other children feeling anxious and fearful, compelling them to confide in a passerby their reluctance to return home. The responding officers uncovered the children's fears of their father and brother, learning of the physical abuse and threats they faced for any act of defiance. Upon the officers' arrival at the Shafia residence with the children, Muhammad's mere presence and a few words in their mother tongue were enough to silence and sway the children into retracting their statements. Rona, Muhammad's first wife, was the only adult in the home aware of the reality, but found herself in a powerless position. Treated as a subordinate by Tuba, deprived of her passport, and with restricted access to communication, Rona managed to maintain contact with her overseas family through the modest allowance she received. That evening, a social worker's visit to the Shafia home led to an interaction with Tuba, Muhammad, and Hamid. Despite recognizing potential evidence for a criminal investigation, the decision was left to the prosecutor, following protocol. No charges were filed, setting the stage for the Montreal police to later probe into a grave crime 2.5 months afterward. Omar led Zainab to a shelter designed as a refuge for young women between 18 and 30 facing life challenges. The facility's staff were at a crossroads upon her arrival, given her unique circumstances. Yet, in this sanctuary, Zainab tasted the freedom she longed for, enjoying the autonomy to move freely. Omar served as the liaison between her and her family. When law enforcement took an interest due to the Shafia family's inquiries, Omar reassured them of Zainab's well-being and her voluntary decision to leave. An officer met Zainab at the shelter, heard her reasons for leaving, and subsequently communicated with her parents, emphasizing Zainab's autonomy and urging them to respect her wishes for separation. Despite the officer's caution, Tuba Shafia, through Omar, orchestrated a meeting with Zainab at a public venue near a souvenir store. Tuba, tearful and pleading, implored her daughter to return, offering a wedding with Omar as a compromise if Zainab's love was genuine. Influenced by Omar, Who had been persuaded by Tuba's promises of protection against her authoritative husband, Zainab decided to return home, a decision that would ultimately prove to be misguided. On May 1, 2009, taking advantage of her father Muhammad's absence due to a business trip, Zainab re-entered the family home. The marriage, set for May 18th, was marred by familial opposition and Tuba's attempts to thwart the union, given Omar's external cultural background. Meanwhile, Sahar and Ricardo considered escaping to Honduras, with Sahar desiring to bring her sister Heidi along, highlighting Heidi's fearless defiance against the patriarchal threats. The wedding, executed through a nikah arranged by her uncle, took place as planned, despite final admonitions against it. The ceremony, marked by the absence of the groom's family and vacant seats, signified a profound dishonor to the Shafia's societal standing. Tuba's fainting at the event underlined the gravity of the disgrace. The marriage concluded abruptly at the restaurant, dissolved by mutual consent as Zainab succumbed to familial pressure, prioritizing her family's honor over her personal happiness. This decision, however, did not mitigate the fury within her family, particularly from Muhammad, nor did it alleviate Sahar's peril, as her secret relationship with Ricardo was dangerously close to being disclosed, leading to severe consequences. On June 1, 2009, Hamid journeyed to Dubai to reunite with his father, and on June 13th, their aircraft touched down at Montreal Airport. Upon their reunion, Muhammad gently kissed Zainab's forehead and expressed forgiveness, though his sincerity was questionable. He desired his daughter to perceive harmony. To solidify this facade of goodwill, on June 23 around 3 p.m., the Shafia family embarked on a brief excursion. Hamid, his father, and the younger siblings traveled in the family's Lexus, while the women occupied a recently acquired pre-owned black Nissan. After enduring months of turmoil, a sense of calm finally enveloped them. The journey began strangely, with a direct route to Grand Ramu along the Gatineau River. Exploring nearby attractions, the family captured fleeting moments of happiness in photographs taken with their mobile phones. The girls and Rona found amusement and laughter in the hotel room, while Muhammad and Hamid took a stroll. If the men harbored any sinister motives, their plan evidently faltered. Following an overnight stay in a motel and a breakfast stop, the Shafia family resumed their journey southward towards Ottawa, forming a horseshoe-shaped route spanning 300 miles. Later investigations revealed their route through Sahar's phone records, as she remained engrossed in constant texting with her boyfriend. By the evening of June 25th, the entire family had reached Niagara Falls and settled into a hotel for a 4-day stay, indulging in tourist attractions, fast food delights, and leisurely walks through the shopping center. On the night of June 27th, Hamid, the eldest brother, inexplicably drove back to Kingston, a 5-hour journey. Tracking his phone's location indicated his presence near the renowned city locks before returning to Niagara Falls. Departing the hotel on June 29th at 6:45 p.m., an unconventional hour considering the 7-hour drive ahead to Montreal, surveillance footage captured Hamid settling the room bills with cash. It wasn't until 8 p.m. that both vehicles departed from the highway, with Muhammad and Hamid occupying the front seats of the Lexus, while Tuba assumed the role of driver in the second car, being the sole licensed woman among them. Traveling east towards Toronto, Sahar documented the vibrant city lights on her phone, sharing them with her boyfriend. After navigating through the city, the cars turned east onto Highway 401 en route to Kingston. Around 10:30 p.m., they made a pit stop at McDonald's. Fatigue led the women and children to doze off, prompting Muhammad to take over driving from Tuba. As they neared Kingston, all except Hamid and Muhammad slumbered peacefully. Ignoring major city exits, the men veered northward towards Kingston Mills Locks, arriving at 1:30 a.m. Sahar received her final text message from Ricardo at 1:36 a.m. Muhammad alighted from the Nissan, with Tuba taking the driver's seat as instructed, awaiting her husband and son's return after they sought out lodging. It was an odd location to wait, having passed numerous signs indicating nearby hotels along the way. Around 2 a.m., the manager of the Kingston East Motel received an unexpected phone call for room bookings. Answering the call, the employee encountered two men, Mohammed and Hamid, at the door. Inquiring about the number of occupants, the men appeared unsettled. Initially stating 6, they later suggested there might be 9, engaging in a brief discussion in an unfamiliar language amongst themselves. Eventually, they settled on 6 occupants. Hamid settled the bill in cash and escorted the 3 drowsy children to their room, after which he and his father departed in their SUV, veering left toward the locks, piquing the motel manager's curiosity. Deciding to wait and observe, the manager found it peculiar that 2 individuals would book a room for 6 in the wee hours and leave almost immediately. By 2:30 a.m., the guests had not returned, further fueling the manager's intrigue. Meanwhile, the black Nissan carrying 4 women descended slowly into the water. Among them were Rona, Muhammad's first wife, and his 3 elder daughters, Zainab, Sahar, and Geeti. This marked the method by which the male members of the Shafia family sought to cleanse their shame. Attempting to stage a car accident, the parents and eldest son, Hamid, encountered difficulties due to the challenging path the Nissan had to traverse. Negotiating a high curb, driving through grass, executing a sharp left turn to evade a rocky outcrop, and then turning right proved arduous. Even then, a concrete ledge obstructed the path to the water, halting the car's progress upon impact. With the engine running and hopes of the car plunging into the water dashed, the relatives resorted to pushing the Nissan into the water using the Lexus. The forceful collision resulted in the left headlight of the SUV shattering, scattering broken plastic on the ground. Retrieving the fragments in the darkness, the perpetrators calmly returned to the motel. The following morning, Kingston police confronted the grim task of identifying the victims and unraveling the events. Remarkably, despite the car being submerged only 6 feet deep, no attempts at escape were evident, with all seats reclined and seat belts unfastened. Several pieces of broken headlight plastic were discovered on the ground in front of the locks, offering scant clues. As the Kingston police grappled with the perplexing scene, a distress call reached the Montreal police from the Shafia residence, reporting the disappearance of their 3 daughters. According to Tuba's account, the girls had allegedly absconded with a vehicle while the family was checking into the motel for the night. Initially assuming they might have returned home, the relatives grew increasingly concerned when they failed to locate them. Earlier, at 7:30 a.m., Hamid placed a call to 911, claiming involvement in an accident where his car collided with a yellow barrier. The peculiar incident occurred in an empty parking lot, drawing suspicion despite Hamid's attempt to fabricate an alibi. As the police noted the Shafia's Lexus with a damaged headlight matching the barrier's height. The tragic end to the family trip swiftly made headlines, evoking public sympathy for the grieving parents and their nanny who lost 3 children. Muhammad and Tuba assumed the roles of sorrowful parents, maintaining their narrative and participating in tearful interviews with journalists. However, public empathy waned quickly as listening devices planted in the vehicles unveiled the harrowing truth. In reality, Muhammad harbored intense anger towards his daughter's perceived defiance, particularly Zainab and Sahar's disregard for his directives regarding relationships. Believing that nothing surpassed family honor, Muhammad deemed his daughter's actions as a grave dishonor to the Shafia name, necessitating their demise, along with Geeti, who idolized her sisters and would not have willingly been left behind. Rona, displaying suspicious behavior according to Muhammad, was included in this tragic fate. The police swiftly cracked the case within 3 weeks, aided by various contributing factors. Past reports to law enforcement, numerous grievances filed with Child Protective Services, Zainab's previous escape from home, and the revelation of Rona Shafia's true identity all played pivotal roles. Additionally, eyewitness testimonies of 2 cars at the locks during the night emerged. All victims exhibited head injuries, suggesting they were incapacitated before the car was submerged, clarifying their lack of attempts to escape. The absence of seatbelt usage and the women's inability to operate a vehicle cast doubt on the car theft narrative. On July 21st, authorities executed a search warrant at the Shafia residence accompanied by social workers, resulting in the removal of the 3 youngest children for their safety. Inside, incriminating evidence against the Shafia family surfaced, including Hamid's laptop containing searches for maps of eastern Ontario, remote lakes, and bodies of water, alongside peculiar inquiries such as, can property be managed from prison? Furthermore, Hamid's suitcase contained photographs of the sisters with their boyfriends, presumably a means for the boyfriends to inform Zainab and Sahar's father of their secrets. Subsequently, Tuba, Hamid, and Mohammed Shafia were apprehended and charged with the premeditated murder of 4 individuals. After 15 hours of deliberation, the jury sentenced all 3 to life imprisonment. Nevertheless, the tragic reality remains that this catastrophe could have been prevented. The turmoil brewing within the Shafia household was known to numerous teachers, relatives, and law enforcement personnel, yet no action was taken to intervene. Muhammad Shafia's twisted scheme to reclaim family honor succeeded simply because he viewed women as possessions, tragically depriving his own children of their lives. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.